So when I'm reading a handful of stories, I usually like to have one that I would consider a palate cleanser in between the bigger stuff, right? If I'm dealing with either very long or drawn out stories, very complex, maybe dark and depressing, after I finish reading that, I don't want to jump into another one that's similar to it. So I like to have something spaced between there that's relatively short, pretty easy, pretty simple, and a palate cleanser, so to speak. The purpose of this is just to reset myself, but sometimes I find myself enjoying these palate cleansers quite a bit, especially if they're newer stories, because I like to see how things grow over time and how they adapt to the medium, right? This new series is one that's only been around for a very short amount of time, and I have not seen anyone talk about it. It is relatively unknown, so I thought it'd be a great idea to talk about it, just to give it a little bit more awareness, but also potentially for yourself to find a series that you may not have read before. You may not have even checked it out and might find a bit of interest after this. This series would be known as the Kajiki Chef, Divine Cuisine, and it has a lot of remnants, a lot of similarities to series like Toriko, Food Wars, anything relating to food, basically, with this essence of battle shonen, but not within the main spotlight. That would be Weekly Shonen Jump. So with that, let's begin. So our story follows a young boy known as Toya. He's an orphan, and his adopted father that he currently lives with runs a restaurant. Now Toya has an obsession with cooking. He has an obsession with creating these very immaculate and pristine dishes by cooking very incredible ingredients. But his father doesn't really allow him to do this. His father is very overprotective of him, semi-abusive in a lot of different ways, but realistically has no faith within him. He wants to keep him at the lowest of levels, allowing Toya to go nowhere near the ingredients whatsoever. So Toya evidently cooks for himself, and potentially some friends that really enjoy his food. His one and only childhood friend would be a young girl known as Isa, and she is the daughter of the town's lord, a princess, so to speak. So their relationship is very odd, with her being a princess and overshadowed by all of this royalty, and Toya being a pretty simple orphan working within a restaurant. Their relationship works extremely well. Isa absolutely loves the food that Toya cooks, to the point where she would skip practice and sneak out of the castle and run away from all of the people trying to serve her to go and meet up with Toya. Now this would put him in some pretty hot water. Obviously, accidentally pulling the princess away from her duties or responsibilities is frowned upon quite heavily, but their relationship is solid. It's very beautiful and bubbly and fruitful. One day when this happens, however, they're eating outside and they get attacked by a giant shark from the sky. And this isn't unknown. This isn't an abnormal thing. This is a normal thing. See, within the world of the Kajiki Chef, there are things known as Kajiki, which to put simply is giant food. Giant animals flying within the sky. Primarily, at the moment, only sea creatures. Differing types of fish, octopus, sharks, etc., etc. These giant creatures are said to be food for the gods, and humans live side by side with them, usually hunting them and trying to cook them because they're extremely tasty. But it's also believe that certain Kajiki have power within them, almost supernatural abilities to do certain things, such as instantly heal wounds or regrow body limbs or cure incurable diseases. So they're highly sought after but extremely dangerous. They're not just regular fish that are massive in scale, they are extremely aggressive and very difficult to hunt out of the sky. So the shark comes down and bites Isa and completely rips her arm off. Obviously this isn't a good situation, and as panic sets in, a voice starts to echo throughout Toya's mind. It would be coming from this very specific knife, asking Toya to wield him, to use the power within this knife to slay this Kajiki shark that has come down. This sword would be known as Hiro or Hihi, and the object that he actually is known as a Tsukumogame, an object that has gained sentience through old age. And the one that Hihi is specifically rare because he can talk. A lot of the Tsukumogame are usually very silent. They are not that sentient. They do not speak or have conversations, but this sword that has approached Toya actually is. So Toya uses his knife. He lets out some blood and it transforms it into a sword. He inhibits a whole new form for himself, able to effortlessly wipe out this shark and cut it up into tiny little pieces. He quickly cooks it up and feeds it to Isa, and it instantly heals her wound. It doesn't give her her arm back, but it does instantly manage to seal it off perfectly. This situation and encounter would change their lives entirely as they get pushed into the world of Kajiki hunting, trying to find a way to regrow Isa's arm, and Toya being able to wield this weapon that is extremely sentient and very much powerful. but it wouldn't be as simple as it seems, as the Kajiki can be very powerful. Cataclysmic events, tidal waves, earthquakes, all natural disasters are caused by very specific Kajiki. There is a mystery about them. They appear and disappear out of thin air. They're food for the gods. Where do they come from? Why do they even exist? Why do they change so many different things? Why do they have so much power? Why do these different weapons exist to begin with? For other people to wield to hunt the Kajiki down. This is where our journey begins. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what the story is about. When I first went into it, I didn't really know what to expect. I'm not the biggest fan of like food stories or food manga in general. I have read a good portion of Food Wars, and then I have read Toriko many years back. And while I did like the aspects of food within them, it was never a main staple for me. It wasn't something that I was continuously going back for to experience. It was more so a secondary thing for myself. So going into the Kajiki Chef, I was rather surprised with how much enjoyment I got out of it. I wasn't expecting the world. I wasn't expecting the most unique storytelling experience to ever exist, but it definitely gave back a lot more than I initially suspected. And I found myself really enjoying not only the mystery of everything, the scale of everything with these kaiju fish and creatures and how they can be turned very effortlessly into food that harbor some sort of power or some sort of benefit, very high benefit to themselves, but then the overall effort that would go into it with trying to hunt them. So cooking it is very simple, especially for Toya, but hunting it is where the difficulty comes in because they're very powerful, they're very quick, they're obnoxious, so to speak. I think I also really enjoyed the simplicity of it. It wasn't overly complex. It kind of knew what it wanted to do. It knew how it wanted to tell its story and just went about it at a very natural pace. And this is something that I think I appreciate very heavily with stories that aren't within Weekly Shonen Jump, because sometimes you can tell if stories are getting a little bit desperate to gain more attention, to grasp onto any sort of fan base that they can ultimately gather in a very short amount of time before they potentially get axed. Unfortunately, this is just somewhat the business module of Weekly Shonen Jump, and every new story or new manga that goes in there has to deal with this to some sort of degree. Some on the extremely desperate side so they don't get axed, and others barely having to pay attention to it. Stories outside of Weekly Shonen Jump, however, don't really have to deal with this, and considering this is published within Jump Plus, which is available officially on Manga Plus and fully free to read for all of you, it definitely handles itself within that way. It's funny because it has this oddly nostalgic artwork to it as well. Like, it's very pretty, it's very beautiful, highly detailed when it comes to the Kajiki, and very dark and gritty in that sense, but the characters have this odd resemblance to Demon Slayer to some aspects, very slightly. It reminds me of it, and it's kind of charming in a way. It's not the most beautiful artwork you've ever seen, but it has that quirk. And if you're able to get behind the story, if you're able to enjoy it, you'll find yourself kind of just getting lost within everything, especially the characters, because they have so much attention brought into them so early on. Like Toya and Iza's relationship is very beautiful. There is a lot put into it, and this is only the first handful of chapters. There's 12 to 13 in total, but the first 3 to 5 you're putting 70 to 80% into understanding these characters. You get a nice flashback for both of them, how they met, why Toya is the way he is, and just their emotions, their mindsets. It's just a great way to build very strong fundamental characters that ultimately carry your story. And considering this rotates around both of them, I was surprised when Iza actually becomes very beneficial to the story. A lot of the time you would expect the main female lead to somewhat be pushed to the side, or the romantic interest to be pushed to the side, and it's very repetitive. It's a little bit boring these days, but this story decided to bring her within the main spotlight as well, to give her own personality, her own power, her own uniqueness, to carry the story equally as much as Toya, the main character, which is a very nice change of pace. It's very simple, but it's nice. It's something that you can appreciate. To be honest, I think there's a lot of familiarity here that people will really love. If you enjoy Weekly Shonen Jump, and maybe you enjoy the technical aspect of cooking or food within series like Toriko or Food Wars, for example, the Kajiki Chef has that, just more so on a watered down level. It's not as intricate, but it does go through the motions at some point to provide a lot of detail if you want it. But I think the familiar sense that you will get is that it feels very Weekly Shonen Jump. You'll find that similar sense of style and storytelling within here. I don't think think this is going to be the one series that you are super anxious and waiting for every single week. It's not going to be the series that reignites your love and admiration for manga, but I do think it is something that you can just enjoy on the side. A little palate cleanser, a little side story, something that you can always come back to that is fun and charming and genuine and doesn't really take itself all too seriously, but has enough severity within it. There is a lot of ways for this story to go, and that's a big part of the enjoyment, the mystery. What are the giant fish within the sky? Where do they come from? What is their purpose? What is the sword that Toya has? More and more questions get added to this list, and this can easily create a very dynamic and compelling long-term reading experience. Once again, it's not going to be the best thing you ever read, but something that you can always read within the middle of other things. Something that you can always come back to and just indulge within the handful of chapters that you've left piled up and feel satisfied after you finish them. For me personally, there's somewhat of a beauty within that, and I think a lot of you may appreciate it as well if you're looking for it. Endtime. So with that, welcome to the end of the video. If you have made it this far, thank you. I appreciate you. I want to apologize for this shorter video. I never planned to do this video, but I had a bit of a kind of health complication recently. Nothing all too serious, but it definitely has detoured a lot of my attention elsewhere, just trying to get better. I am currently feeling a lot better and just trying to refocus myself. And I have a lot of interesting series that people have been asking for a very long time. So look forward to that. I would love to know your thoughts on the Kajiki Chef. Have you read it? Have you never heard about it? Do you plan to read it after this video? Let me know within the comment section below. But with that, I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Drink plenty of water, and I will see you within the next one. Goodbye.